your first job ever?
I was 14. My very, very first job was I was 14. And my mother came home and she goes, "Here, I got a job for you." And I said, "You do?" I didn't know I was looking for a job. She goes, "Oh, yeah, you are." And she gave me this number to the diner in town that I could get there by walking or bicycle. And it was in a diner. And I went in and peeled potatoes and I washed pots. And that's what I did. And for $10 a night, regardless of how long I worked, it was $10 a night. That kind of gives you an idea of how long it was. And I
Wow.
would show up every day and I would wash pots and peel potatoes because they sold a lot of potato salad apparently at the time and home fries. It was a diner.
Yeah.
And I remember doing that 3 days a week. And I was so excited when I got promoted to $15 a night. I think it was awesome. It was big money. And the funny thing is that the guy that I worked for, he had season tickets to the Islanders in hockey. And he's a big hockey guy. And when his brother-in-law couldn't go to the game, he basically took me to the game with him. He goes,
Awesome.
"Come on, Russell, we'll go into the game." And I was like, "Okay." And he'd give me my $15 to go to a game with him. It was pretty awesome.
Was that guy your first manager ever?
Yeah, the interesting thing, my first two jobs were independent restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, shortly after before I was 16, I moved out. We moved about an hour away to another part of Long Island, which is where I grew up. And I worked for another independent restaurant. So my first two were independent restaurant type jobs, entrepreneurial owners, very guest service focused. Maybe didn't have the politically correct people skills that you would need in a corporate environment, as you can imagine. But they were both very, very focused on the customer that came in because that was their life, right? And good work ethic. And
I mean, other than the maybe not great PC language, it sounds like it wasn't a terrible first boss experience.
oh, no. In fact, the second one that I worked for when I was 16, I really worked for him on and off, really through college, through high school, through college. In fact, I dropped out of sports, like the wrestling team and soccer and anything else. I dropped out of sports to work 5, 6 nights a week for one of his restaurants, and I was a senior in high school managing one of his restaurants. And even go through college, I would come home every weekend and bartend. So really, from age 16 to age 24, I had some kind of a working relationship with him. Even driving 3 or 4 hours home from school, putting myself through school,
Yeah.
because I wasn't. My parents didn't have the means to put me through. And I drive home every Friday night. Was to school 3, 4 hours and bartend Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, and get back on the road at midnight.
Yeah.
Drive back 4 hours. It was a great experience, and he's a good friend today.
I mean, it's interesting that we're here talking about creating state cultures, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to hear the things that you do with
Mm-hmm.
that, but how interesting that your very first manager ever, you stuck with them, went to
Yep.
different restaurants, right? But you followed this person. I'm curious, like, what is something, give me something like specific, like, you know what, this is why I stuck with that person and maybe how it's influenced you.
I think one of the biggest. I liked working with him because you always knew where you stood. Like there was never sugarcoating. There was never, and I've really carried that with me. Is kind of my style. Not, I can't sit there and say I learned it then. Maybe I was born with that honesty to just say what's on my mind. He also put me in a situation, I think, where promoted me a lot or gave me different opportunities. And I'd do dishes one day, then I'd prep cook another day, then I would be a busboy. And again, when you're 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, bartend. So he just gave me such an opportunity to kind of play like utility play in all aspects of the restaurant. It really piqued my interest to be part of the business, which is what my goal was at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then he bought an old building and turned it into a catering hall. Then he gave me the opportunity to really go and open that. So I think it was about the opportunity I was given. There was a lot of trust there. And I think because I did a good job, he continued to trust me, and I was learning at the same time.
How old were you when you got your first like supervisor, like where you were actually someone's boss?
Oh,
Or
well,
what
then
were you
I
doing? Was it at one
was.
of the restaurants or was it later?
Yeah, I mean, then it was because I was ended up managing three of his restaurants. To supervise people at that age, I probably wasn't the best person, at that age when you're 22, 23, and you are working with,
Hmm.
obviously there were a lot of such a diverse group of people there and ages and things like that. That was hard.
What is in that time, what do you think is one specific thing that you got right and one thing that you definitely got wrong?
I think I would fast forward a little bit to when I got in the hotel business and I started
Yeah.
like having to follow the corporate path as opposed
Hmm.
to the the independent freewheeling restaurant and
Sure.
that whole thing.
Yeah.
I think I had an obsession or I had a feeling or a thought that I had to know everything about what everybody did. Like if an accounting policy came over or the director of sales or I felt like in my first supervisory role, I needed to know more, everything that they had to do. And I was obsessed with learning it. It got me to the point where I was so frustrated, and I felt, again, I was micromanaging too much. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't healthy for me personally, and it wasn't healthy for them. And it didn't create an environment of people that wanted to be independent on their own.
Did you know? I thought this was interesting. In preparation for today, I
Uh-huh.
looked up, just some general statistics
Uh-huh.
online, and which I always take with a grain of salt. But
Sure.
a recent one was saying that the average tenure, just across all industries right now, is about just shy of 4 years, which I actually
Mm-hmm.
thought was pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
But in leisure and hospitality, it was 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. I think that the hospitality field is so diverse. I think it's a good thing and a bad thing, right? You could be an accountant, you could be in HR, you could be in training, you could do in operations or sales. I mean, it's so diverse, and I think people get in and find that hey, might be a path for me for accounting, or there might be a path for me for HR, and I think
Hmm.
they kind of almost use it as a training ground, in some respects.
Yeah.
I also think that if you go back, if you're talking about like recent history with COVID and everything, and having such significant layoffs so fast, that the reputation of the industry was impacted very negatively.
Mm.
And I think that is one of the reasons why it's hard to like excite people to come back. I also think the reputation, the weekends, the nights. In fact, when I was young, I wanted to be a police officer like my father. Right? That's what I wanted to be. That's all I wanted to be. And he looks at me and he goes, "You don't want to do that." I said, "Why?" I said, "Admiral, Dad." I said, "Cops, you're a detective. I think it's awesome. You didn't even finish high school and you rose to the ranks." And he goes, "No, you work nights, you work weekends, you're away from your family." And he gave me a whole bunch of reasons. And I ended up in the restaurant business at the time, working
Yeah.
nights, working weekends, in the whole bit. And, to me, I don't want to say it's all I know because I did things. I was a roofer when I was young. I put
Mhm.
roofs on, but I'm afraid of heights. I dug cesspools up in the Northeast and couldn't handle the smell. But I did different things and I tried things. But to me, the hospitality business has been an amazing career. You just meet people from all over, and I don't, and you can live wherever you want to live. So I
Mhm.
don't understand outside of the hours and the commitment why
Mhm.
it's turning people away.
Well, certainly at Spire, at the hotel level, certainly when you get into hourly positions, there's a lot more turnover for
Yeah.
a lot of very understandable reasons. But from a corporate environment, your story is a bit different. I mean, Spire's only been around, I believe, for 8 years. Is that right?
Well,
This year?
it's actually no.
Well,
I've only been here
marketing.
8 years.
Okay.
Spire actually was originally Lane Hospitality, and
Ah.
our parent company bought it, you know, 10, 12 years ago, and that's when they turned it to Spire. And that's
Hmm.
when they
Okay.
changed the name because they bought the company, and then I joined in June of 2018.
Okay. Okay. So June of
That's
2018,
when I joined. Right.
and a lot of people boomerang back that. worked with you before, and I know
Right.
this, and for anyone listening,
Hey.
Chris and I used to work with Chris at Pillar. It was like what,
Hmm.
2013 to 2016 when I used to work at Pillar Hotels, and when I, just a few months ago walked the halls at your office, it's like a reunion.
Hmm.
Like, so many people have stayed with you or boomeranged back to you. I mean,
Hmm.
you've got people in there that have been working for you for 10 years, for 20 years, for over 30 years. Now, there
Hmm.
might have been seasons in between
Right.
where life took them in different directions, which is why I use boomerang. And I use that word following you intentionally, because to me, that's really strong evidence that high tenure, isn't with an organization, it's with people,
Right.
right? It's with leadership.
Yeah. I, I agree with that. And I think I, I, I don't think it's me as much as that's the people that I've been able to surround myself with in the past, right? If you hire the right people, they help also recruit people back or help people stay with us. So I think it's kind of a team effort,
Mm-hmm.
that consistent attitude that we all have with a consistent way that we treat each other. I think that's really why people have stayed with us. I think that trust builds culture more than anything else.
Yeah.
And I think the honesty, the transparency, you build that trust. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm a very honest, direct person, and I'd like to think that people always know where they stand, regardless. And I think we surround ourselves with people that are very much the same way and appreciate that relationship like that.
How do you reinforce it with your executive team, so that it's not just you, but that people are experiencing that genuine trust downstream in the organization?
It's funny that you said executive team, which is a common phrase. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the term executive. Like, I don't like executive committees. I don't like that. I think that I've always said that we all have a job to do. We just have different responsibilities. And I think titles are for job description designations, as opposed to, oh, just because I'm this position, the director of this or chief this. I just don't think that way. And I try to surround myself with the same people that think the same way. If you go through the interview process, you bring them on. It's very important for me to continue to be consistent throughout. Like, how do I act when I'm not here? How do I act when I'm treating people, because they've got their lives, they've got their kids, they've got their families, and that has to be equally as important to me, that they've got the time to do that. And I think if we're consistent with that across the board, that just continues to build trust. It's not, there's never, we try not to do a gotcha moment. That's just,
Yeah.
that undermines trust. Or I don't say something and then do something else privately.
Yeah. Trust and integrity are
Hmm.
very core and
Hmm.
authentic
Right.
to the culture you have. And I feel the need to, like, just address really quickly that
Hmm.
those often are aspirational goals, or what we call like permission to play. Like, they're so they're not always basic, but it's like we just use them, or they're on the website, but like it is very, very authentic and genuine within your organization. I'm curious if you have had a leader within your organization that you've had to kind of coach up a little bit on
Hmm.
trust and integrity. Like, they're a good person, maybe they're younger in your leadership, and how did you kind of coach them in those two areas?
That's a great question. I think that good people with the integrity, the honesty, want to be around other people that are very like-minded. And I think eventually, you know, they're not going to stay because they don't want to be
Mhm.
part of that, or they don't feel comfortable. So I think to some degree, it it works itself out. However, would never stand for somebody treating an employee or each other in a disrespectful manner. I mean, very clear. And typically, sometimes with the younger managers, that happens just because they might get this title and they might think that they have earned this important role where they have to all of a sudden change their style. instead of realizing that, no, you got this job because of not only your responsibility, but because you had that right work ethic. You had this, that don't change it just because you get a title. People that have not lasted with us, and I go back in my career,
Sure.
are the ones that maybe are too title centric or too um, don't walk the walk, which is
Mm.
incredibly important. That's the most important thing. If you say something, you're going to do something. Even if you mess up or you make a mistake, just be honest. I think sometimes with the younger managers, you can just kind of nudge them a little bit and explain to them, you know, why maybe the way they did something was wrong, and set the expectations on the front end, and
Mm.
coach them on maybe how they could better manage people on their team.
And I would imagine they're a little bit more coachable at that level,
Right,
at point in their career too, versus
right,
someone who's much more seasoned, has a higher title, maybe is proud of that title, and they should
mm-hmm.
be,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Sure,
are proud of it in a way that it's causing them to self-preserve, self-protect,
right.
and not be vulnerable.
I'm also a fan, or I shouldn't say not a fan of, like, I've never believed in writing your 8 mission statements and hanging in the employee break room and having that be, oh, follow this, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
That's in my mind, that's kind of a cop out. You put it up
Yeah.
so you could show everybody, oh, listen, we got a mission statement. If you're not going to walk the walk, then that undermines everything. So we don't really do that. It's like I've never been a fan of that because, I
Hmm.
mean, have it. That's great as long as everything is, the way you're treating people
Yeah.
is good and genuine. Authentic. Use the word authentic before. I'm a big believer in that.
And authentic and observable and reinforced every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like nonchalant and in your conversations, in your meetings, so much that it's
Mm-hmm.
second nature. You said something earlier that was really, really critical, which was, with when it comes to trust and integrity, whatever your core values might
Mm-hmm.
be, whether they're on a wall or not, like you're so authentically committed and they're so ingrained in your behaviors, and you've operationalized those behaviors that the people that don't meet those, they're exiting themselves.
Right.
Right? You're not having to, like you said, point to the wall and be
Right.
like,
Right.
you're not this,
Right.
see you later. That is so key, I think.
Yeah. I absolutely. And I don't focus on 5, 6, 7, 8 mission statements. Do this, and instead I focus on the behaviors. Right.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
do you show empathy with someone? Everybody's got their lives. Are you sensitive to that? Are you relatable? I try to find something in common with people, whether it be, my favorite football team and their favorite football
Mhm.
team are very different, or, maybe we grew up in the same area. I remember years ago, in my last job, going to a hotel in California, and I walk in and I go check into my room, and the director of sales had changed out my sheets in the room to Dallas Cowboy sheets. And he knows that I'm not a Cowboy fan. I'm a New York Giant fan, and we've had this little rivalry going back and forth. It's just all in good spirit.
Yeah.
And that's when you go in there and you say, okay, we connected, and we still stay in touch.
Mhm.
It's where you find that little bit of a common, and it could be small. It could be something small, or it could be something big. Um,
The small matter, though,
yeah.
I think arguably more than the big. Like the small
Hmm.
daily things compound into genuine trust
Hmm.
versus, once a year, let's catch each other out of a tree,
Hmm.
bring in a bunch of food trucks. Like it's the art, that's artificially built, and that being relatable, that's one of those really kind of unsophisticated but very meaningful ways to build trust with people.
Yeah. And I grew up. My family didn't have a lot of money. I put myself through school. Of my $15 that I made back in the day, or $10, I
Yeah.
helped contribute to the family. I'm not saying that we grew up poor. My father worked 4 jobs, and as did my mother worked, so we always got through. But regardless of how well I'm doing today. I've never forgotten that there's a lot of people that need and to understand that I'm just a regular person that grew
Mm-hmm.
up as tough as everybody else. I know a lot of people had it tougher, and harder. But I think that I've never put myself in a situation where I'm better than somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the team that I have doesn't either, and that's how I surround myself with the people that have that humility. We all got stuff. We all got stuff that we have to deal with, and I think that if you're relatable, if you've got that humility, empathy. I can throw out all the buzzwords, but you got to live it. You got to breathe it. You got to walk it. You got to talk it.
Yeah.
And if I make a mistake, which I will, then you apologize or you change your behavior. I'm constantly
Right.
changing, or trying to constantly change, I should say.
Yeah. And I can tell anybody listening, that's certainly not just lip service. I was so impressed, Chris, when I came to the office last, I don't know, what's October?
Mm-hmm.
I bought a
Right.
bunch of chicken
Right.
biscuits.
Right.
And that was my first time there. And you all were really excited to give me the tour,
Mm-hmm.
and which was pride. Like that's a
Mm-hmm.
wonderful thing in its own. But you were walking me around and introducing me to everybody, and you knew so much. It wasn't, hey, here's this person in accounting. It was, hey, here's this person. She just joined us 6 months ago. She's from Louisiana. She's from this. Her mom.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were introducing me to the actual person,
Mm-hmm.
not the function they do for the organization.
Right. And I think that's so critically important. And I think that you and I worked together where we had 150 people in the office at the same time, and it was harder, but I still tried. I think that I know for a fact that after I left, I got notes from people and former employees that worked with me in the past. They go, the one thing that I do miss is that of somebody walking by my office and checking, looking over the cube and saying, hey, how are you doing today? Or I just haven't seen that in a while. And that to me was like I was very proud of that. Like I didn't realize it at the time, and it wasn't intentional that I did that. Meaning that it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do my checklist. I'm going to go do it. I really wanted to see how people were doing, and I didn't listen. Everybody gets busy. They walk by somebody and they don't really pay attention, but when you do have the time, if you stop by and you try to do that, and it's
Yeah.
not just me. I'm lucky that I surround myself with people that have worked with me as long as I have. Somebody that's been my right hand for a long time. I always said I know my strengths and weaknesses, and she's my strength, I'm her weakness, and I really think like that.
You just said something really important, which is that I genuinely want to know
Mm-hmm.
about people, how they're doing. I think if leader, whether it's a small company but you're virtual,
Mm-hmm.
a smaller big company and you're not virtual, or a bigger organization, that's when people start to justify
Mm-hmm.
the distance that they put between themselves and their people. It's like, oh, well, we're virtual. Oh, we're too big. There's too many. But really, it's if you genuinely want to,
Mm-hmm.
you'll find a way, maybe not with everybody,
Right. It's hard with
but to
everybody. And
whatever extent that you can.
if you always want to do better, because you're not going to be able to develop that with everybody, if you always try to do it and the people that you can, and word gets around and or people see it, then I think that that's so important. And again, I try to be genuine. I know the team around me tries to be genuine. And
Yeah.
even in the hiring process, I always said, do I want to have a beer with this person? You could pass all the tests. You could pass the experience test. You could pass the references. You could pass. You have the right answers, have a resolute. But at the end of the day, do I want to sit down and have a beer with this person? And if the answer is yes, great. And I
Come
know
on,
it's
you're
kind of
hired.
it's kind of a simple way to look at it, but that means that they're likable, right? And
Yeah.
and they'll fit in and they'll treat people right,
It's a simple way, but sometimes the simple is most effective. It's
right?
what a sign of one of the first indicators of a team's culture. It could be company culture, but
Mm-hmm.
any team is, do they actually want to hang out with each other?
Right,
Do they actually want to eat lunch together?
right.
Do they actually want to play softball together? Do they want to go
Right.
to the ranch together? Like, and I'm not saying that every super
Mm-mm.
healthy team, spends tons of time outside of work, but it's just that they like each other. They
Yeah.
genuinely enjoy each other's company and are able to like look past any conflict, any arguments, who's wrong, I wrong. It's like, no, we still love each other. We're still friends. We can move past those things because you have the trust and you have the relatability of the relationship built.
And I think that, I think that it's even true over the last 5 years where the businesses have been taxed a bunch,
Mhm.
with what's been going on in the market and the COVID, and you can blame it on anything, but you got owner pressure, you've got lender pressure, you've got, you know, guest pressure. There's so many different things. And if you have that team around you and all of your effort and energy are focused outward, but you know that the person next to me has my back, or each other's back, then you can deal with all those outside pressures much easier than if you have to worry about the person behind you.
Yeah.
So that's been key to us anyway.
What do you think are some of the wrong things that leaders, executives, and I don't like that word, leaders, senior leaders,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to call them,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think are the wrong things they focus on when they're trying to create their own stay cultures? Like they have good intentions, but wrong focus.
Yeah, and I mentioned a little bit of it. I think my title is this. I am this, so therefore I expect this. Well, no, no, no. That's not how it works. You got to earn that respect. You got to earn that trust. And I think that, or what we spoke about before, you put something up on the wall in the employee break room, or you come out once a year and you don't walk the walk, and you're not authentic when you do come out. And I think that's the again, titles define responsibility. They don't define respect.
Mm.
And I think that you got to really think about, my title is this. That means I'm in the sales area, or I'm in the operations area, or accounting. I'm not going to have this built-in respect. I've got to do it. And I think that people under realize, if that's the correct wording, they don't realize that that's not a right to expect good culture. The other thing is not being relatable, walking around, or not even walking around, not making eye contact. And I former company that we sold, and I think that that's the thing that I missed most, is having that connection. And I think it's so critically important. I think people underestimate that connection to have with people.
So I did a little bit of secret research
Okay.
leading up to this, and I reached out to a handful of the folks that have stayed or boomeranged back to you, have worked with
Mm-hmm.
you for anywhere from 8 years to all the way up to 30 plus years, or who have known you more than 30 years. And I looked at all of their wonderful responses and things they had to say. I thought maybe I should share those with Chris. His head will get too big if I share these things with him, but no,
Oh.
but a few very common themes
Mm-hmm.
surfaced. So I would love to share with you those themes,
Mm-hmm.
just some of the supporting evidence that they gave, hear your reaction, but most importantly, related to the theme, would love to hear what you think is a simple everyday practice that other people could do to make those things happen in their organizations and their teams. So your
Okay.
reaction and like a simple everyday practice. You ready?
You didn't prep me for this, but okay, I'll do my best.
No, I didn't. I love some surprises. Got to
Right.
keep you on your toes, bring some surprises. Okay, so here's the first theme.
Mm-hmm.
Genuinely putting people first. The phrase fiercely loyal came up twice. You surround yourself with a team that has that same loyalty, creates culture of trust, integrity, and I know that anyone he brings into the circle will share those values, genuinely cares for people. That concept of putting people first came up all the time.
Hmm. I'm glad to hear that. I really am. And I think that, although I'm one of whomever you talk to, or how many people you talk to, I'm just one of 5, 6, 7, 8 people that tries to do that. And I'd like to be able to take credit for that. I just live and work and do what I do the way I think is the right thing to do, and I surround myself with those people. So I think the things that they're saying they could say about themselves too.
Mm-hmm.
And I listen. I like I said, I grew up in a family that I learned a lot from my dad, the way he lived, and I never really appreciated until we lost him years later that he was very much like that. He would go and do something for somebody, and when he when he retired from the police department, he was an arson investigator, and when he retired, he went out and investigated fires for an insurance company and on his own, and he would do that, and then he wouldn't take any money for it because he felt bad because they lost their house or something like that. And my mother used to get mad at him, but that was a different story. And I think that putting people first and making sure that and realizing they've got a life, and again, the people on my team that said that, they could say that about themselves, no doubt. And I probably learned more from them, or changed more because of them than they have because of me. I think that I really truly believe that.
One person said that you like to be the dragon slayer.
Oh.
And I was like, I wonder, okay, is this a phrase or a title that you gave yourself? Like, let me go slay the dragon for you.
That's funny that they said that, but it's kind of it's a term that I came up with, and it's my way of saying, listen, if there are things in your way from you doing what you're supposed to be doing, or deliverable or something like that, and somebody is putting an unrealistic expectation, let me be the bad guy to help knock down that hurdle, if you will. I'm okay with that. Like if I have to get in the middle of a request by an owner or a request by whomever that is, or a peer, let me be the one. I'll take the hit. I'll jump in front of the train and make sure that you can get off the tracks in time. It's kind of like an internal thing that I say, oh, do you need the Dragon Slayer? Of course, my wife, who is 100% Texan through and through, who is the nicest person in the world, and I'm a New Yorker, so I had to learn when I moved down to Texas. And she always was, let me this way, as much as she liked me at everything else, she didn't like my attitude sometimes because I was pretty direct and honest, until it came to her advantage, right? And then she'd hand me the phone when she was talking to an insurance company. She goes, all right, go New York on him, go Chris on him, all right? That was my early dragon slaying days. Oh, sure, now you like it. Now you like my attitude. So that's what I try to do.
Okay, theme 2 that came up was that you don't and you've already alluded to this, but that you don't manage from your title. So I think it's interesting that this was affirmed in the secret research that I did. You don't manage from your title, but you also don't avoid making the call. One person said he's never made me feel like I work for him. He frames my role as a partner. He likes to collaborate, but ultimately he's going to make the decision that he feels best, and I trust him. Another said, we don't always agree. That's a good thing. He challenges me, lets me find my way, but never dictates. Another person mentioned similar meaning in a different tone, but that you advocate for people. So thinking about that, not managing from your title, give me an everyday practice. What's a choice someone can make to live that out?
That's a good question. I think that's true. I try not to. And I think that when you do have a title, you've got to try extra hard to make sure that, because there is a natural thing when people look at somebody, okay, he's CEO or he's, the president or whatever, that particular position. Same thing when I was a food and beverage director back in the day. That doesn't automatically give me credibility. So what's right is more important than what the title is. And I just tried to do that on a regular basis. It's, again, the strength in numbers, and the more people that believe like that, and you surround yourself with people that feel the same way, then that perpetuates the culture. That's what gets people going. But that everyday practice, I don't know, it's like everything else. You live it, you walk it, you breathe it. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm usually the dumbest guy in the room. But I try to be the one that's, supportive, but at the same time, I'm responsible for a business. I'm responsible for an experience. I'm responsible for numbers. And I try to weigh in where I can. And if somebody's got a better idea, great.
Yeah. I mean, that simple choice right there, that I tell people all the time, I'm not the smartest person in the room. When I was, 10 plus years ago working with you, I remember you saying that multiple times. Oh, I don't know. I'm not the smartest. I'm not the smartest person here. I surround
Right.
myself. So like that is a repeatable phrase.
Mm-hmm.
That's a phrase you use.
It's
It's
true.
not like
That's true.
cheesy or geeky. Yeah, well, that's true.
I know that.
Yeah, but just for people to admit, like, I don't know.
That's the humility, right? That's the humility
Yeah.
that you need to have, and that's one of the behaviors that I think it's been important to me. That's how I've been able to grow my career. And honestly, I've never taken a job for money. I've never. I've always taken a job to be around other people that I believe think the same. And and that's what I'm trying to do in my career is just be around people that are all think the same thing, right? And it's hard to do, and you oftentimes don't know that. You hire somebody you think is going to just like that, and you find out 3 months later they're not.
Yeah.
But it happens.
Final theme here, and I've
Okay.
got one more surprise and then a fun way to
Oh.
end it. But no, it's a good surprise. But the final thing that came up a lot was they described the culture as feeling like a family. Like it truly feels like a big family. Families have good and bad attributes, but at the end of the day, we got each other's back. We take care of each other. One person said it's actually hard to have a work-life balance when your team feels like your family and you want to
Mm-hmm.
do right by your family. So an everyday practice for helping promote a culture that feels like a family.
Hmm. I think recognizing that they have families, recognizing that they have lives and they've got, like I mentioned earlier, brothers and sisters and husbands and kids. And if you honestly let them have their time, and I have people here that we're forcing them to take vacation. We try to do that.
Yeah.
And we got people that have every single minute, lined up, they know what their PTO is. And that's fine. I mean, they do what they need to do, but I think it's just that respect that you need to have for them and their families. It kind of breeds that culture.
So a fun segment I've started doing with my season 2 guests
Mm-hmm.
is I reach out to a mutual friend or acquaintance ahead of time and ask them for a question to give the guest. And you and I have quite a
I was
few
just going to say that's
mutual.
scary because there's a lot of mutual people there. So,
I know.
right.
I know. So of all the mutual people well, I'll just tell you, I chose your daughter because I think
Oh, okay.
it's awesome. You want to talk about a point of evidence of actually creating a genuine stay culture when your
Hmm.
daughter loves you and likes you enough as a dad
Mm-hmm.
to, and she's been there for how many years now?
20 since 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, I asked Carly
Oh,
for a question that she would want to ask you, and she said because she just turned 30,
yep.
she wants to know what is one thing you would tell your 30-year-old self.
That's great question. One thing I would tell my 30-year-old self, let me this way, take risks. I think when I was 30, I think I was married when I was 30. But I think that anybody that's kind of in there, kind of growing up, in that stage, take risks, take chances. Don't be comfortable. Like don't turn things down. Don't take a job for money. Take a job for the experience. And look at what I've always said. What can I gain out of the next 5 years by going here, or what can I do if I just stay here? Is it more money in the bank? That was never important to me, as evidenced by my bank account. It was always am I going to learn something here? Am I going to when I was 26, I loaded up my car and I had zero money, and I moved down to Texas. And I had 5 boxes in my back of my trunk and my car that I borrowed from my brother and took over his car payment. And because I just wanted to do something different, I wanted to take that risk, move down here. In fact, the funny thing is, my father looked at me. He goes, "You're not coming back." And I said, "Why?" He goes, "You're going to marry a Texas girl. I know it." I said, "No, no, no, Dad. I'll be back in 2 years." And sure enough, all these years later. But I think take risks, and I probably maybe I probably should have taken some more risks. I don't know. I think I've made pretty good decisions. I really haven't had, I've worked maybe 4 companies in my career, but I think there's opportunity to take more risks. And I think there's also an opportunity, and I don't want to say the self promotion, but I probably could have been done better if I talked more about the things in a humble kind of way, things that, a little bit better self promoter, I think. Because not everybody realizes just because I'm doing that, everybody doesn't realize it. But there's a way that you can self promote without being obnoxious.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably taking risks, celebrating those risks, admitting that you made a mistake. I think that's
awesome.
That's where I'm. Oh, that's a good question, though.
It is a good question. It is a good question. Good question, Carly. All right, I'm going to, tried and true, I'm going to close us out with a fun lightning round
Okay.
of questions that you have not seen, purely just so people can get to know the human side
Oh.
of Chris, not the business leader, stay culture side of Chris. Okay? So these are just intended to get your quick reaction, your quick answers. Okay?
1-word answers?
Right.
2? Okay.
Not necessarily. Yeah. Whatever
comes to mind. Okay.
If you had to coach the Cowboys for a week, what's the first thing you'd fix?
Well, that's a great question. I would never put myself in a situation like that. I would probably hire a bunch of, I don't even have a good team that I support that they can help. If I could coach the Cowboys for a week, I'd probably hire Sal Vasquez, who has been on my team 15 to 20 years, and maybe put him in charge.
I love it.
Yeah.
He would know what to fix.
He's worked with me for 2 companies now, and we've been together probably 15 or 18 years or something like that. So
he was one in the secret.
Oh, was he really? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In boots on your ranch or in a button up in the boardroom, where do you feel most like yourself?
Work boots at the ranch. Easily. On a tractor, on a Ranger, fishing, doing whatever I can do. Much, much rather do that. And I've always been like that.
Do you relate more to the early movie Captain Von Trapp or the post Edelweiss Captain Von Trapp?
I'm a big Sound of Music fan. You trapped me on that one. You know that. I was at the windmill in my 2nd grade during a Sound of Music play because I was the tallest kid in class. And I just sat there for 2 hours waving my arms around like I was a windmill. Whatever that meant, I have no idea. But it's funny. Every time it comes on every year, I'm always watching it.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So are you more the rigid, stern, kind of grumpy Von Trapp? Or are you the softened, see your children in a new light, appreciate family in a different way Von Trapp?
Well, if I need to go Chris on him or go New York on him, I'm clearly the old, right? Depends. If I have to slay some dragons, that depends.
I love it. Is a passion project or a cause that's important to you right now?
I think, my wife is very involved in I try to support. We've got our daughter, as has severe autism. So we're very focused on that, that's big for us as a family. And, even in our company right now, we're doing autism training for our hotels and our guests that come in. And that's usually important for a lot of personal reasons because we see people impacted every day. And, we lived it. We'd live it, I should say, and I have for 28 years on our Carly's younger sister. And, I think that to me is just where we spend our time, especially my wife, who does so many different things, in the community with helping families that, that's really important to us. Autism and related neurodivergent needs.
Speaking of risks, and maybe it's not a risk, but what is something you would like to start doing?
Something that I would like to start doing, I'd like to do a better job of taking some time off. A lot of it's self-inflicted. I'd like to spend more time. I bought an e-bike this year and I've only used it for 10 minutes. And it
Did you
sat.
stay on it?
Oh yeah, it was great. It was great. And I have to get better at it. And I've never been one to do it, but I bought it for East Texas. I have a lot of trails out there. And I used it for about 10 minutes and I left it in the weather issues that we've had out there, especially the freeze. And now it doesn't start. Now it doesn't.
Oh
I had the
no.
battery crack. So I don't know. So I have to fix that. But yeah, I'd like to do a little bit more of that if I can. Just being more out, you know, just enjoying myself a little bit more.
We need to
I don't
get
like
you
to
back.
travel. By the way, I'm in the hotel business.
Yeah.
I don't like to travel. I don't like to stay in hotels. I've been there, done it. I'm at the point where I just like to, sit with a fishing
Kick
pole
it
or
back.
whatever. Kick back. Yeah.
Yeah. We need to get you back on the ranch.
I'd much rather take a barbed wire fence down at 100 degrees than be in wine country at 60 degrees for me.